This first stretch of Broadway is known as the Canyon of Heroes, and it's the site of major public gatherings. This is home to the ticker tape parades, where heroes in convertibles drive up Broadway to City Hall, and as they drive, they're covered in trash. In earlier days, ticker tape, today just shredded paper. The first trivia question for this bite: what was the first ticker tape parade held for? It was impromptu, wasn't planned at all. It coincided with the dedication of something nearby in the harbor. Any idea? Any idea? She's green, carries a torch. Anybody? Anybody? That's right, the Statue of Liberty. The next ticker tape parade happened 13 years later for Admiral Dewey on his return from the Philippines, and there have been at least 175 ticker tape parades since. The biggest decade? The 1950s. And how many have been held for me? 0. Oh, yeah, I get this a lot though. Yeah, trash stuff. As we walk up Broadway, we'll pause in the cemetery at Trinity Church for a riddle. This is the grave of James Leeson. Note the peculiar symbols that line the top. In 1794, he left a puzzle, a code that wasn't cracked for almost a century. Let's see if we can crack it in less than a minute. Let's see. It looks to me like right angles and squares could be Masonic symbols, but I don't think so. It might also be a tic-tac-toe board. And then you could actually just assign letters to each space, which would mean that an upper left-hand corner would be the A. And then, of course, there are more than 9 letters in the alphabet, so you'd have to have more tic-tac-toe boards, which is why they're using the dots. So a single dot would be above the first letters in the first tic-tac-toe board, double dots above the second tic-tac-toe board, and no dots in the last. So all you have to do is take the symbol, match it to the letter, and you have the puzzle. My palms were sweating. My heart was racing. What could this be? I was this close to figuring out a mystery placed in this graveyard more than 200 years ago. Drink your Ovaltine? A crummy commercial? Wait a second. In the 18th century, the I and the J were used indiscriminately, so they go in the same box, which means all the letters move. That changes everything. My heart was back up to 174. My palms, which had dried, were now moist again. T-H. I got it. I got it, Leeson. Remember death. Remember death. That's the best you could come up with? We're in a cemetery. Thanks a lot. We're up at the next church, a parish of Trinity Church. This is St. Paul's Chapel, the oldest building in continuous use in Manhattan. It opened in 1766. The church is made of Manhattan schist, the rock which you see popping out of the ground in parts of the city, especially Central Park, and the rock that holds up our skyscrapers. St. Paul's is also one of the only buildings on Broadway with its back to the avenue. The front of St. Paul's is on the other side. But the last trivia question has nothing to do with St. Paul's. It has to do with some statues just north of the church. This was built a century ago for the New York Evening Post, and the statues on the 10th floor are called the 4 periods of publicity. 2 were sculpted by a man whose initials were GB, and 2 were sculpted by his wife. But what famous American sculpture did GB go on to sculpt outside of New York? Slightly bigger, but also made up of 4 parts. 4 heads to be exact. GB is Gutzon Borglum, and his most famous statue is Mount Rushmore. As Oprah would say, Mount Rushmore!